Right. Thank you, candidates, for making it here tonight. Gently make it to your seats, sweet friends. Okay. Thomas, take a question and a question. There we go. Good job. Nope, that's it. Good job, my friend. Oh, it got quiet real quick. Thanks, family. How are we doing tonight? Today? It's 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock on the dot. Okay. We have our candidates here. Miss Lisa Calderon is on her way, so we'll get her up here. Okay. In the meantime, as you all got settled, I'm going to pass the mic to EDFH co-founder Roberto Mesa to kick us off.
Thank you, Jackie. Wow, it's so great to be here, to see everyone, the community. Before I begin, I wanted to see if our interpreter is here. Awesome, great. I'm going to pass the mic on so that they can provide some guidance for today's interpretation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sully. I'm here with the CLC, and we are here to help to create a space for language justice. What this means is that we want to that everyone participate in the language of your heart or the language that you feel more comfortable with. So in case you need an interpretation device, let me know so I can provide you one. Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Sully, estoy aquí con el CLC. Les agradecemos a todos por tenernos el día de hoy y nosotros creamos un espacio de lenguaje donde las personas pueden comunicarse en el idioma de su corazón o el idioma en el cual se sientan más cómodos. Si necesita, por favor, un equipo de interpretación, déjenos saber para proveerlo. Gracias.
Hey, gracias, thank you. All right, well, I just want to give a big thanks to all of you for making time today to come out and interface with our candidates. And thank you, candidates, for coming today and partake in this conversation. My name is Roberto Mesa. I use he, him, él pronouns. I was born in Mexico and came to the United States when I was 5 years old. I identify as a first-generation Latinx farmer. And you know, I'm really grateful to have had the experiences that I've had, challenging and beneficial as well, to lead me to the path to where I am today. And just going to introduce myself a little bit more. The co-founder of Emerald Gardens. It's a 35-acre greenhouse farm in Bennett, Colorado. We support land access models. We provide technical assistance, resource support for young beginning and farmers of color. Currently, we are supporting sugar moon mushrooms, as well as a regenerative farm operation called High Plains Eggs, and in a partnership with Spirit of the Sun to develop their agroecology indigenous education program. I'm also the co-founder of East Denver Food Hub, one of the partners here to make this event possible. And East Denver Food Hub is a local organization that supports resilient and equitable food systems through value chain development, value chain coordination, aggregation, distribution, access to markets, education, strategic partnerships, as well as policy. And my other roles as an individual also include being a member of the Colorado Agricultural Commission, where we get to advise. There's 9 of us on the commission representing different regions around the state, different perspectives and opinions, but we get to advise the General Assembly, the governor, and the Commissioner on Agriculture on food system related matters. And this is a big turning point for the department that's now being focused on local food systems and food access in addition to their previous priorities in the past. I do this work, my team does this work, our community partners do this work, all in an effort to advance a vision of a local food system that honors land, values farmers, and ensures that people always have access to fresh and nutritious food. We believe that access to food, thank you. We believe that access to food is a basic human right, that land is foundational, that we collectively are agents of change, not just passive consumers. And we're here to endeavor to create a food system that benefits our communities and allows them to thrive. So before we begin, I just want to pause, maybe take a few moments, close your eyes, and think about what that food system actually would feel like. What does it look like? And what does it taste like? And so now that we're in this space, I want to bring our attention back. This is why we're here, to have these conversations and see that this vision isn't just aspirational, that this vision is happening now, that our partners here, our community is actually moving this thing forward. And this is a call to action and an invitation to look at food systems differently, to look at food differently. How can we start thinking about food in a way that benefits this vision, our communities? And perhaps one day we won't have a need to fight for food access because we will have an equitable food system. So with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jackie.
Cool. Well said. Well said. I always appreciate a meditative moment. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Drummond, and I use she, her, or they, them pronouns. You could stick to one or switch it up. I am the partnership and programs coordinator at East Denver Food Hub. Very grateful to be so. And I will be facilitating our conversation for today. Okay, we're going to have some speakers from the audience. A lot of these questions have been developed by the community members. You RSVP'd and submitted some questions that have been consolidated, as well as the students bringing their questions to the forefront. So I've asked Roberto, all of the speakers today, to prepare a positionality statement. And what that really is sort of like an intro, but maybe with a little bit more depth, sharing some of the identities that people might see and perceive of you, and then maybe sharing some that people would not see of you. And I asked them to do this because it helps us as audience members understand the lens that they see the world through, and that can put things into context for us. So I'll set a little example with my own, and like a nerd, I wrote it down, okay? My identity is at the intersections of being queer, non-binary, first-generation American, neurodivergent, and a community space holder from a trauma-informed lens. I am a sixth-generation light-skinned African-American by the way of transatlantic enslavement. My lineage is of the native Cherokee tribes of this land that we now call America, and of the Germanic regions of Europe. I am a lifelong Coloradan, and I have been in the Front Range, in the Southwest, and the backcountry in between. And now I am the partnership and coordinator of East Denver Food Hub. Okay, so that's a little example. Thank you. Oh, I love that. Sort of leading off of that, what I alluded to a lot in that, right, is about the land. So I do want to take a separate moment to acknowledge the land that we are on, what was predominantly Cheyenne and Arapaho land, but over 48 different tribes of peoples shared or inhabited this land. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the genocide of those Native peoples, and then another moment to acknowledge the enslavement of other peoples. And then I want to take another moment to acknowledge the ways that those persist. a lot of which are the intersectionalities that we will continue to talk about today. So that's a little bit of the stage. Before I pass the mic to the candidates to introduce themselves in their own positions, I will explain a little bit of how today is going to work, okay? If you've been to some of the other panels, the panelists know, they've been through them all. They all have slightly different formats. So this is how today is going to work. Before you arrived, the candidates picked from 5 questions that came out of the community or the students. They will each have 2 minutes. Well, each of them of the question that they've been given will have 2 minutes to answer. We have Angelica in the back, yes, with our time cards. Can everybody see those? I'm checking now. Okay, we saw them. Okay, the likes, okay. All right, you heard that. Okay, so I'm at 1 minute, 30 seconds, 15, and then a very nice stop. We have 10 candidates today, so keeping track of time will be very important, and I thank you all in advance for your respect in that way. After the question has been answered, there will be a 2-minute space for reply, rebuttal, or for candidates to add more information. A caveat to that, because of our time, is that each candidate only has 2 opportunities for a rebuttal. So use them wisely. Okay. All right. We have these 11 candidates, some of which, or we have 10 candidates here today, some of which of all of our options for candidates are not here today. We asked these candidates in front of you and the other ones to write down their responses to these questions. We will be providing all of the written responses as well as a recording of the Zoom. We're on Zoom. Everybody turn, look at the camera and say, hey, community. So we're also on Zoom. We will have this recorded and distributed to the community as well. Okay. If you get overstimulated at any time, if this room becomes too warm, it's eco kind of heating and cooling, so bear with us, okay? We have another overflow room that you can go into at any time, and there is also closed captioning as well. As a facilitator, I will be using progressive stacking as a way to keep track of speakers and the order in which they will speak. And so what progressive stacking is taking into account what you'll hear in a moment, which could be where we lie in social disadvantagement in the social construct that we're in, right? So I'll be taking that into account. Another way to look at that is if someone who's been speaking a lot wants to speak, I may wait to give someone else who has not spoken as much or had their voice heard in the conversation more priority to give the next response. We'll see it live and in action. Any more rules? Let's find out. There will be time for Q&A at the end. So if your question wasn't hit, we didn't get around to it on the ones that we did ask, then I will definitely create some time at the end for you. Amazing. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you, audience members, for taking the time to be here. Thank you for braving the cold. We appreciate you. Please keep any affirmations or anti-affirmations to a gentle and courteous level. That's what I'm going to say about that. Okay. Okay. I'm going to pass the mic to the candidates, and we will start with Lucky Mike down at the end, and you can just pass it all the way through, and I'll come meet you at the end, Doctor. This is combo platter. 1 minute each.
Great. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Mike Johnston. I use he, him pronouns. I identify as a white cis male. I am of Irish and Scottish extraction, and so delighted to be here with you. I'm also proud to be a trustee of Metro State, and so spent a lot of my time working on how we help provide equitable access to opportunity for families in this community. I started my career here as a school principal. I was a principal of 3 different high schools around the region, including one with students who were incarcerated at a juvenile detention facility, one with students who'd been removed from their homes for physical or sexual abuse and were living in residential treatment centers. And one, a student up in Thornton that served primarily young people who were undocumented. And that was what brought me into politics in the first place, was that I had a number of students who all got admitted to college and could not go to college, because in Colorado you couldn't go to college unless you had to pay out-of-state tuition. So that brought me into the state Senate. We successfully overturned that law and made it possible for everyone to get access. That bill was signed in this building. And then I've spent the last 3 years working at a foundation trying to provide families and kids access to equitable opportunity across the city. And so delighted to be here, and thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for that wonderful grounding introduction. It's the best one we've had so far. I'm Lisa Calderon, and my pronouns are she, her. I am a cisgender woman, Afro-Latina. I am born for my mother, who had me as a teenager. Her people are from Aguascalientes in Mexico. I'm also born for my Black father, whose people migrated up from Texarkana. I'm also the mother of 2 children. They are adults, and including one who is a member of the Navajo Nation. And what I have learned from being her mother, that it's very important to be tribal specific. It isn't just who you claim, but who claims you. And I'm a survivor of domestic violence, of teenage homelessness, of racism, sexism, classism, and a college professor, including formerly at MSU and currently at Regis University and CU Boulder.
I'm Trinidad Rodriguez. My pronouns are he, him, el. I'm mestizo. I am born and raised in Denver, West Denver, raised by a single mom who, and am father to a 19-year-old daughter. I was born and raised in West Denver, like I said, and we faced some tough times along the way. It was a neighborhood rich in love, though sometimes things were tough, and the city helped us through the tough times. And so I paid it forward when I started my career in finance 25 years ago. And my financing went on to build affordable housing communities, schools, hospitals, and clinics that went on to serve tens of thousands of Denverites. And I'm here today because have been, and that really sets me apart from a lot of people here. I am dedicated to fighting for Denver, as I have over the last 25 years, to build my vision of a city where every Denverite, regardless of the neighborhood they're in, can achieve their version of success.
Hi, my name is Ian Thomas Tafoya, he, him, L. Born and raised here in Denver. I'm also mestizo. My mother's family immigrated to the United States in Kansas and Colorado from Sweden and Germany. And my father's family, we are mixed Latinos and Jicarilla Apache, also known as the Jende, in the Okeowinge, which is the Pueblo from the headwaters of the Rio Grande. I am a graduate from Metropolitan State University. I studied political science, Native American studies, and went on to get a horticultural therapy accreditation from Colorado State. I conducted my undergrad research on increasing yields in greenhouses here. I fought for composting on this campus, planted the first fruit trees on this campus, and laid the groundwork for the community gardens. I went on to work in the mayor's office for what was called the Denver Seeds program. Our goal was to get to 20% local food by 2020. We didn't do it. So I went to work working on dozens of ballot issues here in Denver that are centered around the environment. I'm a Colorado State Director for Green Latinos, a national environmental justice organization. And just today, I was teaching thousands of children about urban agriculture and civics. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm State Representative Leslie Herod. Her, she pronouns, like the chocolate. I do identify as a Black queer woman, and I'm proud to be the first African-American openly LGBTQ woman elected in the state of Colorado. I do say openly LGBTQ because we know there are so many who have served before that were not allowed or not able to be open. And so it's my honor and my privilege to be here and to be out. And so I come from the Herod side of my family is from Water Valley, Mississippi, where we had a hog farm. And the biggest thing for our family is making sure that we can keep that land and continue to do the work that we do in the South. My mom comes from Oakland, California. She joined the military where she met my dad, and I was born in Nuremberg, Germany. Food is really important for our our family and our community. I created Caring for Denver, the foundation that funds a lot of the work that's going on around food justice in our community because of the nexus with food justice and mental health. And I look forward to having the conversations today. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Thomas Wolf. I'm a white he, if you believe 23andMe and the little spit test. I am Northern European mutt, German, Bohemian, I think a little Scottish and Irish. My campaign is singularly focused on ending encampments. Encampments are inhumane and they are fiscal suicide for our schools and our city budget. I've had a 20-year financial career that I can prove this to you. That impact is on the horizon and we need to avert that. I have an academic background in science, got my MBA in finance at DU. I've also done nonprofit work in affordable housing. Was on the board when we built the MCA Denver, just down the street as well, and have worked some in education. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Terrence Roberts. My pronouns are he, him. I'm from Northeast Park Hill, which is a food desert, and I want to spend my first couple of minutes talking about why we're here. You know, if you live in the middle of Park Hill, the only grocery store we had was in Mayfair off of 14th and Cremeria, okay? And on a cold day like today, if you don't have proper transportation, or if you didn't feel like walking a mile and a half, you may not have food in your refrigerator if you're a 7th or 8th grader going to Smiley Middle School or going to one of those elementary schools, okay? Food, the democratization of getting food to families and making it available is crucial to ending our cycle of poverty. It is housing costs, it is fuel costs, and it is food costs that are keeping people who do not have money poor. I said this on the 9 News debate. Our children are going to school. They're going to school hungry. They're going to school angry because the biggest precursor to kids joining negative peer groups is domestic violence, and that stems from poverty. And food cost and the democratization of food is important.
Hi, everyone. Jim Walsh. I'm still trying to adjust to this campaign. I have so much respect for all of my colleagues. Anyone who goes through this has my respect. I go with by he, him. I'm a white cis male, and I identify as Irish American. I'm from dozens, really, of ancestors who were refugees from the Great Hunger, the 1840s in Ireland. I grew up in Appalachia, a very working class, large family. I tell people when I introduce myself often that my garden is larger than my house. And I'm very proud of that. I grow tomatoes. That's what I do. I grow tomatoes and I give them out all over my street. And my neighbors call me the tomato guy. So, so I have a great appreciation, not just for the food and the quality of the food and the nutrition, but the community and the mental health that come with working the soil and reaching out to others and giving them food. I run a radical community theater called the Romero Theater Troupe. We put stories on stage about human rights struggles. Someone wants to say, I'm an organizer, an athlete, a poet, and I'm so happy to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kwame Spearman. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a Black cisgender male from Colorado. I'm the descendant of slaves, so I can't unfortunately go back much farther than that. I can tell you that if my dad was 2 years older, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to go to the University of Texas, where he went to college. He then moved here to a city that embraced him, and I'm forever grateful for that. My mom was a Denver public school teacher, principal and administrator for 37 years. And I got to be honest with you, I grew up with a lot of privilege. I never went to bed feeling like I was food insecure. I never went to bed on an empty stomach. Because of that, I was able to do a lot of really cool and interesting things, including purchase the Tattercover bookstore. But the one thing that I can tell you is that I am very, very, very committed to making sure that everyone else has the opportunities that I had. What we'll see in our society is everything is interconnected, but if you don't have proper access to food, your life choices are limited. One of the things I always tell people when I bought Tattered Cover was those who have access to literature have very different outcomes from those who don't. It's the same with food. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Abbas Bamba. I speak English with a different accent. I look different. I'm from the country of Ivory Coast. I moved here in America in 1997. And I spent some time in New York. And I moved in Denver, Colorado in 1998. I started my life here as a cab driver, as a bus driver, as a security guard, as a homeless man too. I'm from a continent where we know the value of food, where we know the value of hunger. That's why this debate tonight is essential for me. That's why I came here, to share experience and to give idea. So I will thank the person who put this thing together, and I'm ready to talk. Thank you.
Let's get ready to talk then. Thank you, candidates. Appreciate it. A gentle reminder for our closed captioning and also interpretation. Although our time is limited, please speak nice and slow and clearly. That's for you, babe. Okay, let's enter the questions. I'd like to hand it off to a student leader of the space. We're very grateful to be in MSU. We have candidates that have history here. It's a pillar of education, amongst many things. So Mike, without further ado. Here you go, friend.
Thank you so much, Jackie. So I'll start with my positionality statement first. Hello, my name is Michael Warner. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a sophomore here at MSU, and I identify as Mexican-American, mestizo, and I am first gen. I'm the proud son of a Mexican immigrant and a small business owner who live about an hour away from here and are watching tonight. So hi, Mom, hi, Dad. My parents are my moral compass, and they're the reason I am here today. My skills may be in numbers. I'm an accounting major, but my passions are in leadership in solving our community's problems. That's why I am proud to represent MSU Denver and serve on our student government. So I have a statement to just start with my first question. So today I want to talk about a critical issue that affects thousands of students here in Denver: food insecurity on college campuses. It's a problem that has a severe impact on a student's ability to concentrate, retain information, and ultimately succeed in their academic and professional endeavors. A 21 Real College report showed that here at MSU Denver, 35% of students surveyed had experienced food insecurity, which is above the national average. Here at MSU, that translates to about 6,000 students. In Denver, many students struggle to make ends meet and find themselves skipping meals or compromising on the quality and quantity of their food intake. As a community, we cannot afford to ignore this chronic issue of food insecurity any longer. Back in 2007, the student government here at MSU saw the issue and chose to address it head on. Rowdy's Corner, MSU Denver's food pantry, started off as a student government initiative. It started off in a closet and has grown so much over the past 15 years. But 15 years ago, though we did recognize the severity of this problem, 15 years later, the problem persists and has, if anything, only worsened. My student government this year passed a measure donating a large percentage of our budget to our food pantry because we recognize the needs of our students. That is why I urge tonight's candidates to be an integral partner that students in college need and make food insecurity a main issue in their campaigns. This is not a controversial issue. We as students expect that our mayoral candidates will create solutions to eliminate food insecurity here on campus and further in Denver. We must create sustainable, long-term solutions to ensure that all students have access to nutritious and affordable food. Possible solutions can include establishing / supporting on-campus food banks, expanding access to SNAP benefits, providing subsidies to students so they can purchase healthy food, and partnering with local organizations to provide meals to students. It is time for us to come together as a community and take action and address this crucial issue. Let us ensure that every student in Denver has the opportunity to succeed. Since the beginning of the semester, Rowdy's Corner has served over 2,400 students. Let's get that number up to 6,000 students. Thank you. So the first question I want to ask you all here, topic on food insecurity is, one of the largest food insecure populations in our community are higher education students. What is your plan to address food insecurity in Denver, particularly for vulnerable communities and marginalized populations like the student population?
Thank you, Mike. Who of our candidates has question 1? Ian? And Kwame. Thank you. Ian, would you like to speak first?
Sure, thank you so much. This is a big issue, and I was talking about it with the vice president of MSU Denver right before this started, about some of the great programming that you all were able to do to get people into programming in the first place. When I was a student here, I was struggling with housing costs, transportation, energy costs. We have to be tackling those too, so that people have more money to afford food in the first place. We were also talking today about how there's programmatic work to get people to enroll into SNAP in the first place. They created a system that allows people to access all the tax credits and benefits they have. It's an amazing system. We absolutely should keep that going. I would also say that we have a responsibility to bring local food hubs here and to actually grow food on campus. And that's why I was saying before, we laid the groundwork to plant the first community garden here on campus. It was so difficult because it was a tri-institution campus. Trying to get all the institutions and HAEC to work together is a real struggle. I think the mayor's office and sustainability in general should be leaning on AHEC to doing everything they can, whether that's composting here on this facility. And we need to be working to bring mobile food hubs into these communities. I am a supporter of the Botanic Garden CSA, and I do an extra share, so my food comes back to the Denver Human Services food pantries. I think that's incredibly important. The Fresh Low Project out in Montbello. I belong to the now defunct co-op in Westwood. I hope that we can find ways to support them. Many of these groups struggle with rent, among so many other things. Now, I just want to say that my commitment to equity and marginalized communities is seen through the work I do. Every day I go to work with Green Latinos and challenge the system as it is. We have a huge responsibility to make sure that the environmental justice is directly connected to this. There are people who live in insecure communities and unhealthy communities where they can't grow in their front yard, where the air they breathe isn't safe, where the water they have isn't safe, where they can't cross the street because it's safe. We have a huge responsibility to support these communities. As the chair of the state's Environmental Justice Action Task Force, the Department of Agriculture at the state level was involved in this. We have the plans. The Vision 2030 is the same plan that we had 12 years ago when I started working in the mayor's office. It's time to put plans into action.
As we get started with the format, I might come up a couple times. All right, thank you very much, Ian. Do we have 2 responses that you'd like to make? Anyone? So in between each question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question, and then the other candidates will have 1 minute to rebuttal, and they each have 2 opportunities to do that. You like the numbers on that one? Does that make sense, folks? So we have an opportunity for 2 of you to comment, give feedback, or if you'd like to save it for another question, we can move forward. All right, Jim.
Yeah, I really appreciate the work Ian's done over the years, and I want to add to it. I've taught here for 25 years. I started here as a graduate student in 1993, and so I've noticed the food insecurity, housing insecurity of the students here as well. I just had a graduate student who earned his master's degree living in his car, and I would add to that food and housing insecurity of faculty. There are many part-time adjunct faculty who are not offered benefits, who are paid per class without a consistent schedule, cannot rely on that schedule. They are food insecure as well. So this to me is just as much as we're going to talk about food today, we need to talk about labor. We need to talk about class. We need to talk about the responsibility of the institutions on this campus to help students and faculty who face this.
So I want to start out by thanking Ian and Jim on their work on this topic. One of the things I'll always tell you is when I want to learn more about this, and these two have helped me on this particular issue. I want to take a second to talk about my neighborhood plan and why I think that's relevant to it. What I've seen in Denver is that we are so large now that we have one size fits all solutions. And what that really means is we don't do a very good job coming into communities like this and listening. We don't make the people in this room feel seen and feel heard. And if we don't do that, we can't learn from you. And suddenly it's just us talking at you. So what I fundamentally want to do on this issue is learn. What I can tell you is I know that community gardens are working. I've spent a lot of time at Revision over the past 6 months, and what they're doing for Westwood is absolutely fantastic. We should use our city lands to have community gardens because those not just help people get access to food, as Jim noted, they also provide labor. Right? All of these things are fundamentally interconnected. If you are food insecure, you are likely housing insecure. So one of the big things that I think we need to do in our neighborhoods is ensure that our neighborhoods have proper housing. It is absurd to me that MSU graduates can't live in Denver anymore. And we've absolutely got to change that. We've got to have service level housing. So for people who are teachers, our nurses, our police officers, our firefighters, we all need to have these folks in our neighborhoods. And the premise is that we need to listen to you. And the reason why I'm so inspired by that is you all have your stuff together. You can teach us so much on this. And so I look forward to continuing to having that conversation with the notion this is all interconnected. And so we've got to talk today about housing and labor as well. So thank you so much for that, Jim.
Any comments, feedback? You want to take a turn? Back to you.
I just thought of a few other things that I wanted to mention here. When you talk about listening to you and what was working, during the pandemic, what the community came to do together to feed everybody was one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my entire life. A great friend, Ricardo, with Bondadosa, who worked collectively to scale the amount of meals that were going out to work with DPS. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. With ARPA dollars going away, what I've seen is an administration who's not saying, let's double down on the things that worked and let go of the things that didn't. We need to support the people who've been putting the effort in for a very long time. And lastly, I'd say the city and county of Denver has the ability right now to be pushing on the Farm Bill, to be pushing on the federal government and our elected leaders, Dan and Daggett and the senators, to make sure that those monies come back to our communities. It's essential that we have a working relationship between the city and county of Denver and the resources at the federal level, because let's be clear, that's where a lot of this money is coming from. We've done the work with Healthy Food for Kids. It's not enough. We need the backfilling from the federal government, same with housing.
Okay, there we are. That's the end of question 1. Reminder. Oh, to Dr.
I think the young man was asking about food security on the campus. The first step on the food security on the campus, the cafeteria on the campus. Because this is where the student spend most of his time today. If you have those cafeteria, those restaurants with a lower tax, they can sell the food to the student at a lower cost. This is done across the world. In Europe, in Canada. So those are practical steps we need to take first. After that, you can talk about farming, federal government funding, all that. The question is how this boy will have a food every day when he's ready to go to class. The problem is tax is too high on the food and on campus. I've been in school here. I spent 10 years of my life going to school. So I know the reality. When I was driving a bus, driving between the airport and the campus, take a class, have a food. If I did not have a cafeteria, I don't think I would be secure. That's the first approach. After we can talk about the politics of the other thing. For the moment, how do we resolve the current issue? Thank you.
Thank you. We are doing 1 minute for responses. Thank you, Terrence. I see you. Okay. Yes, we did not do a comment on the initial question, so I'll make up time. You get.
It'll be less than 1 minute. I just want to say I really appreciate the work that Ian and other community leaders did in COVID to make sure people got food. But I want to remind people of this. Let's remember during COVID, Pizza Hut was essential food. McDonald's was considered essential. My father died of COVID, okay, because he was highly diabetic and he had too much sugar and carbs in his blood. He couldn't handle the virus. My mother's mother, my grandmother, died of diabetes, okay, because that's all they were eating during COVID. If they couldn't get the food that was coming from the community, healthy food, healthy green food, cucumbers, those types of things, we killed a lot of people during COVID because they couldn't handle the virus, because we were making people diabetic, because McDonald's was essential food. If we have another COVID, we need to make sure there's better food sources and ways to get it. We need to democratize our food and our food ways to get the food.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 2 and take it to the audience. Josh, let us know what your question is from the community, please.
How y'all doing? My name is Josh Wise. I am here representing the Farmers Market Committee of Mile High Farmers. Our goal over the last 2 years has been to expand SNAP accessibility at the City of Denver farmers markets. In the last 2 years, the number of Denver markets that accept SNAP has increased by 100%. Did you know that you can accept SNAP at a majority of the Denver markets? We now see the need to increase SNAP usage at our farmers markets. Colorado households will see a loss of $53 million each month when the COVID public health emergency max allotments end. That's $53 million no longer going to our families, farmers, or small food producers. Our committee sees a need for more culturally responsive materials and increased community outreach so that SNAP can work better for all Coloradans. How do you plan on improving SNAP messaging and usage so that it continues to support our neighbors experiencing food insecurity, as well as our farmers who are providing food to our communities? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I do have question 2, and I want to thank you for that question. I'll start by saying I was on SNAP through college. I'm probably one of the few folks on here that has utilized food assistance. Myself and my family has. If I didn't have access to SNAP, I would not be able to make it through college. When I came out as LGBTQ, there was a period in my time that I didn't talk to my family. And the only way that I had access to food was through benefits. And I'm glad that I had that access. But what I tell you today is that food access, especially in our farmers markets, doesn't feel accessible. Doesn't feel accessible if I have to go to Cherry Creek to go to the farmers market as opposed to my community. And so I appreciate the work that you've done to make sure the farmers markets were available in all of our communities and that they reflect the needs of our communities, the food desires of our communities. We have to expand that. So I was part and did co-sponsor a bill at the state legislature to ensure that farmers markets could accept SNAP, right? I also got rid of the pink tax so that we could stop spending our money on paying taxes on tampons and other hygiene products and diapers and be able to spend it on food, because I've had to make those decisions. And I think it's important that we have folks at the table who have done that. And so one way that we improve access to those markets is making sure they're in our communities and that they're funded and supported. And by the way, we shouldn't put up barriers like making sure you can pay for a permit or making sure that you can pay for different things that the city is requiring, that the city can pay for ourselves to make sure that there's access to food. And what was said earlier is absolutely right. Going to school hungry means you can't learn. I went to school hungry and I wasn't the best student when I did. You know, we should have access to those healthy foods. And thank you. It should not just be McDonald's. It should actually be healthy food. Oh, I have 15 seconds. Great. The other piece that I would add is making sure that we also know how to grow and sustain our own food systems. We need to teach that in our communities. And now I have to stop, but I'll get back to it, I promise.
Whoa, hey. Before you get started, Terrence, do any of the candidates who have not spoken yet have a comment, feedback, something to add to what Leslie has added? Okay, we'll save it for after. To you, sir.
Okay, so I'm from the original SNAP program. It's called food stamps. I don't know if anybody here remembers food stamps, but you walk in with a wad of money like you're a drug dealer and buy bread and all the things, right? You know, and it might blow away. Oh, did you have a car? Even the card is new for me, you know. And I grew up in public housing. My mom's a single mom. It's me, my little brother, my little sisters. You know, when we're talking about SNAP, that's the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. That's what it stands for. Supplemental Nutritional. The fact that it even has to say supplemental means that people are doing without. That is the whole purpose of SNAP. When we're talking about getting the word out, because the question is about getting the word out. If you are the mayor of Denver, you can get the word out about whatever your priorities are. You're on Fox 31, Channel 9, Channel 7, even when you don't want to be in the media, you're in the media. You're tired of the media, I'm sure. Just running for mayor, you're tired of the media, right? Okay, so the messaging is there. When we're talking about farmer markets being supported because we need more places having SNAP, we need to make sure that farmers markets can keep supplying the food to people who accept SNAP. People can buy the food, then farmers markets can keep supplying them, making that money. SNAP money can equal real money for farmers. And also we have to think about racism in farming. We have a racist incident going on in Pueblo, Colorado that is making international news right now. So we need to make sure that all of our farmers are taken care of, but we need to democratize the way, I'm gonna keep using this word, democratize the food we're giving people and the way they're receiving it. Everyone can't even go to a food bank. It is cold in Denver and it is hard to travel. Thank you guys. Or do I have 15 more seconds? Oh, okay. Vote for Terrence Roberts. No, I'm just, but yes, I'm actually not kidding. Do vote for Terrence Roberts. But however, we can do better in the city of Denver. We have a $1.49 billion general fund. I wasted my 15 seconds, but we could do better in the city of Denver, guys.
Anything you'd like to add?
I just wanted a clarification. So when we add a comment, that counts toward our rebuttal, and we can only do that twice.
And you can only do that twice and you have a minute.
Okay.
She said, not now, not for me. Thank you. She said, I'll take that mic. Okay. All right. Thank you. Snap. To you, my friend.
So I would wrap up my answer probably or rebuttal or comment on the whole thing from identifying as a native Iowan. My father was a dentist, but in Iowa, in any typical city, you're just surrounded by a sea of farmland. And after reading Michael Pollan's Omnivore's Dilemma, you get a better understanding of, you know, what's gone on there. My college actually had the helmets that say, America needs farmers. And I always objected to that because I think America needs land stewards. And the, you know, a lot of the issues we're in are because of agribusiness. But to solve the issue from my financial lens is getting students fed is what I can immediately leverage at the city is procurement. So we are big buyers of lots of different things within food stuff. I'm sure a lot of them aren't great choices, but they will get you fed. The other side too would be what we can do in cutting out the middlemen between the farmers market, all sorts of different activities that you have there, and getting that directly into the city so that there isn't the scrape for the middleman in that, and give access to local farmers and those, and even priority. We also have make those determinations within the stadium district. And I don't know if any of you have been to any of the stadiums or tried to find anything edible there. It's disgusting. And to the extent that the local providers could have access there would be outstanding. And I'll yield my last 15 seconds.
Oh, okay. I'll make sure you get it back at the end. Okay. That is, yes, okay, candidates, point of clarification. Okay, with progressive stacking, I'm taking notes on your time. So I will make sure you all get equal time to speak, okay? while we could talk endlessly, truly, about food insecurity, we'll move on to our next topic, and I'll make sure you receive the written responses as well as the resources the candidates have provided for you. I'm going to invite Roberto back up to the stage for our next topic.
Thank you, Jackie. And thank you, candidates, again for your thoughtful answers. Our next topic is on food resiliency. Building resilience in our food system requires an intersectional understanding of food as it's connected to other issues at the forefront of campaigns and platforms: economic stability, homelessness, public safety, etc. You've all already alluded to the interconnectedness of some of these issues. The pandemic revealed just how interconnected these issues are, and also how fragile our current quote unquote efficient food system actually is. And so when we're thinking about access, we also need to think about production. There's no food access without production. And so part of this concept of resiliency encapsulates a holistic view of the entire supply chain. But more specifically, what are the values that are going to contribute to that food resiliency? I remember as a farmer, my co-founder and I, we were struggling in terms of how we were going to buffer the economic fallout of the pandemic. Right before the pandemic hit, one of our major grocery stores went bankrupt, and we started off the year at a $10,000 deficit. Then we lost all of our food service industry partners. And it was our community relationships that allowed us to pivot to bring food directly to communities, specifically as federal and state funding started to address the increased need of for food insecurity. And so for us, that revealed to us an incredible opportunity to showcase what should have been in place from the very beginning. How do we create opportunities to fund folks that are farming, to have access to land, to get access to the resources, and to do so in a way that advances sustainability, regeneration, and food resilience. And so with that in mind, we're looking at how you are going to incorporate this mindset, this perspective, and perhaps offer a paradigm shift. It was the experience of that moment in resiliency that revealed to us that it wasn't just a dream, that we were actually able to do it. And as you addressed the work that Ricardo was doing, they were one of our partners. And so, and this can only happen if we build those partnerships. Farmers and community organizations can't do this alone. We need the support of the city, of the mayor, and of everybody involved in actually making this happen. So with that in mind, I have a question for you. First question is, please describe any plans you have for creating economic opportunities for individuals who identify as Black, Indigenous, Latinx, Latino, and or person of color in food and agriculture.
Thank you, Roberto. Question number 3. And Dr. Bamba, to you.
That was the question I was waiting for. I think the biggest challenge is most of minority community do not have enough information to the fact that they can be a farmer and a successful farmers. Also, they're not informed as well about all the federal programs put in place to help minority farmers. So to me, it's a matter of education, communication. If we have those two vehicles to talk to the minority community, I think they will discover the beauty of farming. Because I'm from Africa, my father was a farmer. When I came here, I did not have a farming in my head or something else. But to me, it's a two vehicle, communication, education. Based on those approach, we can help those minority communities, part of our population to become a farmer. There's no any magic solution. We just have to educate people to know what they don't know.
So I mentioned neighborhood plans and why they're so important to me. There are three criteria, right? There's housing, there's safety, and then the most important for this question, there's the local economy. So I'm a huge fan of Eat Denver, and I don't want to totally, I'm going to paraphrase some of their facts, but if you look at the restaurant industry, it has one of the highest percentage of female employees. It also has one of the higher percentages of Black and Brown employees. We have a local economy in Denver right now that is under attack, and we need to provide more resources to our business. Just go down Walton Street. There were amazing businesses that provided food to that community. Those businesses are all out of business right now. As our mayor, this is a huge thing. We need to go into our neighborhoods, particularly our neighborhoods that have large Black and Brown populations, and we've got to understand how we keep the cultural identity of those neighborhoods. I live in Whittier. We used to have amazing soul food. We don't anymore. So not only are we losing our cultural identity, we're also losing jobs for Black and Brown individuals.
Thank you. Thank you. Another comment, any feedback?
Yeah, to add on to what Kwame said there, a lot of those folks get to work by bicycle. So we need transit solutions to get them to these neighborhoods. The bigger sense is the people that ride bikes in the city are not the folks out on the race bike down on the path there. It's people, you see them early morning and late at night grinding it out, typically on a seat that's really too low for them. I never point that out. The other thing is a big part of the food desert issue, I think, is instead of still having these little shopettes in the different neighborhoods, if you can follow the old trolley map, there was always a dry cleaners and a shopette and probably a pub. That's because of the zoning requirements for grocery stores, that it's a parking ratio that's designed for the suburbs. As we become more urban, we need to get rid of that so that these shopettes can exist. That's just a quick, immediate solution, and it's a very common issue with food deserts.
Mike, please.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited I got this question. I'm always mindful as a white male with a history of privilege about how you approach this question. And my belief in this is that folks who looked like me had voices who were very loud in the construction of these racist systems. And folks who look like me ought to have voices that stay equally loud in the destruction of those same systems. And so I think that is an obligation I try to carry. When I first got elected to the state senate, I opened a community office in North Park Hill with Terrence. Terrence and I opened it together. And that was, and still is, one of the largest food deserts in the city and county of Denver. And we, in an effort to try to combat that, opened both a community garden in that neighborhood as a way to try to grow fresh organic food to solve those problems. We also opened a food bank, so we knew the access to food was going to be so difficult in winter months. We did that option too. But what you find is when you think about the access for leaders of color to farming, you have the overlapping of two of the most racist systems at the same time. One is access to capital, and the second is access to land. And when you combine both of those, the ability to have an entrepreneur who gets access to capital, to get access to land, to be able to farm and grow food is the biggest challenge we face. And so there are two things I would do here. One is, I've said as mayor, as a part of my equity agenda, we would make sure we prioritize investment in entrepreneurs of color who are trying to grow industries in the city, making sure they can get more access to resources and get them faster. That's particularly true if you're in the agriculture industry, where we know the access to land is a huge part of the burden. The second is how we think about actually growing community wealth throughout the city as a part of how we use land. Right now, what we know is that in too many places, things are getting built in a neighborhood. And what happens is a small number of mostly white folks get very rich off those developments. And the folks who live in those neighborhoods get pushed out and lose access to ownership into their own neighborhoods. I would change that through what I call neighborhood trusts, which would mean the city could give this land to a project, but by giving that land the 30% of the land that we own, that 30% of the project now is distributed to all the community members to own 30% of that project. So if it's worth $100 million and it sells 10 years later for $200 million, that 60 million actually goes to the neighbors who built that community and were there long before the development came. That's part of what I do around equity citywide.
And
Thank you. I'm really curious how you haven't talked at all, Mike, about dismantling the systems that you built. You talked about a lot of shiny objects, which are absolutely not going to deal with the systems. Okay, so I want to hear about how you're going to break up the system. I'm proud of you for passing 123, but financing for affordable housing is a house of cards, and that's another part of the house of cards. It only works in years where we have a Tabor surplus. Yet we all of our community who are relying on those resources can't always wait for a year where there are Tabor surpluses. So why'd you design it that way? Who in the community told you you should do it that way? So starting to dismantle these systems means actually, I really want to hear how you're going to do that. Because all I've heard are a lot of shiny, bright, shiny, keep your eye off the ball kind of platitudes.
Great. So I think to make sure I understand your question, it's how does, you want me to explain how Proposition 123 works and years of. I did, but you said about dismantling systems and you mentioned Prop 123. So would you like me to talk about Prop 123?
No, I gave you an example. Another way that you instituted a broken system that is supposed to serve people of color and low-income families. And you just did it again, just in November of 2022. So I'm asking you how you're actually going to dismantle the broken systems that oppress people of color and low-income people, instead of talking about bright, shiny objects that we know we have a long list of examples only due to undermine people of color and low-income communities.
Well, let me answer your specific question on this one, then I'm happy to answer other ones if you have them as well. So the question on Proposition 123 is, what do we do? How do we use this as a tool to actually help provide people access to affordable housing? I'm happy to give as long of an answer as you have time to take. And how do you dismantle the systems that are right now unequal? And I'll tell you how to do that. Right now, the system of building housing is unequal because you have investors who come in and put money in, and they get rich off of those investments. And the result is that people get much higher rents across the city. And so what we do is replace that with a system that doesn't have wealthy investors making the money and walking away with the resources. What instead it does is allows those dollars to come through CHAFA, which means those are public dollars that come in to help build housing. And that means that housing can stay permanently affordable. So you never pay more than 30% of your income to rent. And that means you can't have a new owner or a new investor come buy the building and say, so sorry, this was affordable before, now we're jacking up the rent, and you get kicked out on the street. That is actually sustainable systems that keep units affordable over time and prevent people who've been displaced from getting displaced even more. So I think that's the one concrete answer.
I'm going to pass it to Lisa for a response, and then we'll move on to our next question. Thank you.
I am so glad for this question because, Mike, this is the first time I've heard you talk about in all of our debates your white privilege and racist systems. And yet when you were asked about why you were in the race with very qualified women of color, you talked about you being part of that diversity. When in fact, what we're trying to do is change the face of politics so that we can save ourselves. We don't need saviors. We know what we need best in our communities. And when we talked about educators, and I think it was Jim who said it, I've been one of those educators who was also didn't have enough income, didn't have a steady contract. But I also remember the educators in the mean-spirited bill that you passed against teachers that also accelerated the push out of Black teachers. So while we are trying to build and dismantle systems, I think about those teachers who were pushed out of DPS, who were then left jobless, and therefore were left food insecure because they didn't have jobs. So when going back to the question of what have you done to dismantle those systems, rather than riding in on your shiny horse and giving us the plan for how we're supposed to follow, why don't you follow us and listen and center actually the voices of the people that you claim to be advocating for?
Mike, I know it's hard to stop in a heated moment, but we're going to move forward, okay? Okay. And I'll, again, give the candidates an opportunity to send resources. Okay. Roberto, would you ask our second question or our fourth question? See, now I'm getting wild with it.
Second question for this topic is farmers and small businesses need money and resources for infrastructure. How might you support our hyper-local food system, farmers and producers in their growth? And I want to add something else to this. If in fact we know our communities best and we know how to meet those needs, how can you see us as experts in implementing some of those resources and strategies?
All right, thank you. Candidates with number 4. Question number 4. Oh.
You raised his hand first.
No. Lisa, please.
Yes. So my struggles in the movement actually started with my family before I was born. My grandmother was a migrant farm worker who didn't have a voice and didn't have autonomy over her own labor. Later, she had 11 children, and those children were nourished from her body through breastfeeding, and she was very active in the La Leche League, and that got passed down to my mother and to me. So when you are a lactating person and you don't have enough food to nourish your own body, that impacts your children and their child development. From my mother, who was active in the Chicano student movement, went to University of Colorado at Denver. She had me on the picket line at 5 years old, supporting migrant farm workers before I even understood what I was doing. We were boycotting grapes and lettuce. And because we were on food stamps and commodities, fresh food like grapes were seasonal. And I asked my mother, why couldn't we eat the grapes? And she said, because there is blood on them. Now, I later came to understand what that meant, that when people sacrifice so much to put food on our table, we had an obligation to stand up for them. But the need came from them. My mother was part of a co-op, so when we talk about small businesses, called Adelante, that brought fresh food into the community. We need more of that. We need more food co-ops that are funded. The small ones can't get necessarily to capacity or sustainable, and the mid-sized ones can't grow. So the city has an obligation to deliver on that. Thank you.
The question 3 and 4 is the same thing here. I think Mr. Johnston and Sister Calderon, I think the discussion here to be really, we have to come together. I watched your debate at the Regis University. I love your that line, come together. Because when you are informed, you can make your way in America. When I start my business, I was told as a minority, I would never land any government contract. I thought to myself, that can't be possible. I educate myself about the system. I read about the system. I find my way. And I land my first contract after 6 months. They told me it would take me 3 years. It did not take me 3 years. That's why I was talking about 2 vehicles. Communication, education. Any obstacle, any challenge cannot be waived if you're not educated about how to waive the challenge. Yeah.
Thank you. I think this question ties really closely with the other question as well. And so I want to start by saying our farmers and our small businesses are completely underfunded in Colorado and in Denver. That's why I created Caring for Denver, was to fund organizations like Revision that were doing the work in community. We were one of the first to provide large grants to support the work. People should get paid for what they're doing. Additionally, we have the opportunity to make sure that we are allowing our small businesses to thrive by, yes, providing land, but also making sure that there's commissary kitchens for our communities to access for free, so they can sell their goods or trade their goods, whatever you want to do with that. That's what my family did in the South. There was no grocery store in my town, no grocery store. So that's how we got by day to day. But additionally, and finally, Denver has an opportunity to utilize the land that Denver already owns or to expand and grow to provide land that BIPOC communities can farm ourselves. It's happening right now in the South. It's happening in Durham, North Carolina. I went down there and saw it, and it was like the promised land where there were people of color, BIPOC people, queer folks creating goods and farming. And they were able to do it because it was considered a true business where they were invested in by the local communities. That's what we have to do. Right now, food and farming for people of color, for BIPOC people, is not considered a precious commodity in our city. It's not valued and it's not funded. We can change that with the mayor that actually cares.
Thank you. And thanks for the question. I should have acknowledged a minute ago that I'm actually on the board of MSU Denver Foundation. So I honor the team here who put this on from MSU Denver. I also wanted to mention a little bit, I am a customer of East Denver Food Hub and really enjoy the incredible produce at the City Park Farmers Market each week during the growing season. In terms of what we do for farmers and small businesses that need resources and infrastructure, the answer is that I believe, though some of my teachers are here in the audience from having worked in the community supported agriculture fields for 9 months, or a little less than 9 months, but at the Botanic Gardens for 9 months, learning about our local food ecosystem. And what I learned was I was only scratching the surface and how little I did know. But I did bring my financial know-how and my real estate know-how to develop a plan that increases access to, that creates a market for land closer to demand centers in cities just like Denver. This is completely possible, and it can actually fuel the concept that Leslie's talking about, and it's actually really possible based on my research. Secondly, Denver Botanic Gardens can actually serve as technical assistance for our farmers and share ways to increase yield and use more sustainable growing practices. Thirdly, our city departments, especially our Parks Department and our Transportation and Infrastructure Department, has tons of equipment, and that can be used and shared with local farmers through sharing agreements, agreements, just like Denver Parks Trust does when you volunteer to help clean up your local park.
Okay, Jim. Oh.
Yeah, it shouldn't escape us today that we're having this conversation on ground where a massive displacement happened in the early 70s, 50 years ago, actually, when this campus was built. 500 families were displaced, and they tried to make up for that by offering agrarian scholarships, displaced scholarships. But I want to say that I want to shift the conversation maybe from food access to food sovereignty, which is a term that I appreciate because it speaks directly to empowerment from communities, not sort of dependence on food that's accessible. And one way to do that, I think low-income communities face the myth that they don't care about growing food. But what I notice is that there's not just resource lacking, but also time. Many people on minimum wage have to work 2 or 3 jobs. If we had a universal basic income program where those families would be free to be with children and to go out and farm and grow food, that would benefit all of us, that would benefit those communities, and that would be the civic health of our society would be greatly improved. Universal basic income, its time is now, everyone, and I intend to do that as mayor.
All right, I just want to jump in here. I wish I could ask answer the other questions. I just want to say really quickly about education around SNAP. I do not think we're in compliance with Title VI. We're taking federal dollars for education or for outreach and language access. I thought about equity in the jail. We're feeding people through Aramark. We're not feeding them through local dollars. But I want to say that the 2A for parks is allowed to use for trees. We could be growing fruit trees and using money for it that way and giving people access to capital. I helped pass Resilient Denver, which became climate action, where 50% is supposed to go back to low-income communities, impacted communities. We can leverage that money. Healthy food for healthy kids, the Build Back Better agenda, critical. I've had an opportunity to work directly with the White House and the Department of Agriculture to talk about how we bring those resources home. And Terrence, you and I agree about public banking. 350 Colorado started out fighting for public banking around sustainability and resiliency in farming. We need to create it because we can drive these once in a lifetime monies and these tax bases into it. And hopefully we can do away with sale tax altogether because we have other resources to tap.
I see you both wanting to respond. Lisa, you can respond, and then we'll move on to our final question before Q&A.
So Jim, I'm also very glad actually that you are part of the lineup of mayoral candidates, but it's a different side of the same coin as with Mike. You talk a lot about dismantling systems of oppression, and yet I've never heard you acknowledge the labor of women of color or the fact that we have 17 candidates, 5 of them are women. And so when we talk about the labor, women's labor that doesn't get recognized, I'm wondering, where is your gender analysis when you are talking about these issues? We have women of color tend to be overeducated. I have 4 degrees, including a master's, and a bachelor's law degree and a doctorate in education. You have a point of privilege as being a tenured professor, which a lot of us could not get. So at what point do you also practice what you preach and step back?
A powerful question that we will not right now hear the answer to. And that's how the cookie crumbles in life sometimes, folks. Okay. Is there your question?
I had just one more.
We have to move on to our last question. Will you use it on your next question? Okay, it had to happen. For our final question, we have another student intro to set the container for what food sustainability looks like. And Shersha?
Hi, y'all. An honor to be here. My name is Saoirse Jenny Maloney, she, her pronouns, and I'm a student here at MSU Denver. I'm a white Irish American, first generation transgender scholar right now, studying to become a teacher. And I'm really grateful for y'all being here right now to talk about sustainability. My background in this work is also as someone who grew up farming in rural Colorado. And so, excuse me while I pull up my phone because I'm expecting the question elsewhere. Oh, thank you. And so to ground this and please take this beyond just composting as well with sustainability. But what we're looking at is although we do see compost containers on most college campuses and many areas in Denver, we're unsure of the tracking and impact of these waste diversion efforts. We know about that new initiative to have compost at single family houses, but we don't necessarily see that being implemented at more low income housing as well as apartment housing. The majority of students here at MSU are folks who are in apartments. So while we benefit often from compost programs at our university, we don't see that same benefit in our own homes. So there's a lack of education and thus distrust in the community about how to participate effectively in waste reduction and where the composting, waste, and recycling goes. How will you work to make these programs more accessible and affordable for all residents while prioritizing communication and impact reporting? Thank you.
I think this was kind of lucky for me to get because I would look at this from my finance, econ, geek lens. And since we're on a college campus, I'll get graded as a professor as to whether I can explain this or not. But I look at this as externality costs, and Milton Friedman would be a great person to read about on that front. And his premise is that if something isn't an economic model, if it's either free or infinitely expensive, you cannot manage it. So to the extent that we do not, so within that, you need to have a carrot and a stick. So it's the only way that when water was free, it was free to be polluted. So if there was no cost to polluting it, it obviously got polluted. Same way with the air, same way you can look through it and you can look across the landscape as to where we've made progress. I would encourage more visibility as to what those actual externality costs are, and assess that. There's probably a different way of doing that, residential versus commercial. And within the residential, it needs to be, mean tested for sure. But that's what you've seen in other areas that have been negative impacts into our climate and into our cities, is doing it that way. And I think I would trust Milton that he was right, and that is the way to make headway.
Thank you. Okay. There you go. Comments? I can give it to you. Okay, we can save it. Okay. All right. To you.
Yeah, so I think that when we do these forums, we're often expected to be experts on all of these issues. I am not an expert on compost, but I'm learning. I'm trying to do as much research as I can. I'm learning some things, such as there isn't really the compost infrastructure that is needed. And I'm learning that when compost travels, we lose trust in it. We don't know what's in it. I'm learning that the city's compost isn't something that we're encouraged to put in our gardens. There's microplastics coming from the stickers, the adhesives on the stickers that gets into the soil. So there's a lot to think about, and I think localizing compost makes sense. Again, back to food sovereignty, making sure that compost infrastructure is grown and expanded and localized. Yeah, so there's an organization I just want to make a shout out to, the Consumption Literacy Project. And this project is working in many ways with community all over the city. Education is so key to this. Survey 100 people, and how many of them would know much about compost? Not many. So I was happy to get this question. And again, I'm learning.
Okay. It looks like we have entered Q&A. I absolutely am. I absolutely am. We, shocker, are running a little bit behind time. I'm going to ask for 2 questions from the audience, and then after that, you can flag me down, let me know what your question is, and I'll send it to the candidates and see what happens. Sound good? Okay. Questions? You, sir? And I see one in the back.
Okay, hello everyone. This is more like a statement. We got bombarded with a lot of information in this information age. And we all say that information is available, but when people don't operate in high vibration, they don't know what choices when it comes to information. So we've got all these social media things coming at us. It's way too much. And what we have to do is start making positive more appealing. Negativity is so seduced. It's appetizing, alluring, and delicious. And positive goes like this. Whoop. So we have to train children and everybody to start becoming critical thinkers, so that no longer we're doing the monkey see, monkey do policy. We're starting to think for ourselves. And that's something I wanted to say.
Oh, thank you. Red shirt for mayor, red shirt for mayor. For those that have not used all of their talking time, responses?
Yeah, I want to thank Ian for bringing up public banking, you guys, because we didn't get a chance to talk about that. We're so quick to push out all these 30-second, 2-minute, 1-minute responses. You know, and the gentleman earlier said, you know, will we be willing to listen to the experts? And no one really addressed that. But with a public banking system, that feeds back into our infrastructure. And I said earlier, we have a general fund. I know, of course, it's not just our general fund. We have federal grants and other subsidies coming to the state of Colorado. But what if Donald Trump gets into office and Denver's a sanctuary city and we lose some of those hundreds of millions of dollars? All we can depend on is the money and the sales tax that we know we're going to have for sure. But most of that's going to Denver Health, is going to our jails, is going to our sheriff's department, our fire department. We need to add a public banking system. We need to make Denver a 24-hour city. We need to add more sales tax to make sure that we can do more composting, listen to farmers, and make sure we keep that cycle of food distribution going.
So I'm going to use my minute just mainly to expand on my answer to the question I had. And that is the real, I think, answer is for urban farmers is to have a mayor who actually, who sees, understands, and set the standard for this misunderstood and not widely understood enough reality that exists in our city and the problems of food insecurity. So a commitment to making this issue known. And there are 3 pillars that I will use to build trust around improving our food systems as mayor. One is communicating everything we do, our logic, in ways everyone can understand it. Secondly, empathizing with every one of our stakeholders. And thirdly, creating a place for authenticity for us to shape our community and our vision for our future. And that's really hard to do when there's a lot of diversity, but you can do it by just valuing difference, starting by valuing difference and protecting it.
We've got a question in the back. Hello, my name is Tai Win. My pronouns are she, her, G. I'm a refugee, first generation, and a food justice advocate. This is a question for Terrence Roberts. What do you think are the best ways for responsibility and sustainability, developing and maintaining land for food production in Denver? What strategies do you plan to implement to support local agriculture and food production? And how do you plan to promote sustainable farming practices in the city? And how would you fund this work?
Great question, because I just talked about this just a little while ago. We do need to add more income sources to Denver. We need things like I just said, a public banking system. Ian brought it up. Like the gentleman said, we need to keep food moving. Food rots. Healthy food, it has a shelf life, guys. That's the problem with unhealthy food. It's full of preservatives, okay? If we want people eating healthy food, we have to make sure our food is getting from the farmers, getting to the markets. People can use SNAP. People can get it out. And if we need to use eminent domain to free up some of this land for more public housing, for more places to put public or community gardens, for more education about putting your own garden up, then guess what? We will use that because we have the resources here in Denver, and we'll do whatever we have to do to make sure people can eat and children don't have to go to school hungry, or workers, or professors, or students.
Thank you, and a shout out to my colleagues here talking about public banking and have been for a while, and also all the women of color in the fight. So to be clear, because it wasn't said yet, the farming subsidy program in the United States is extremely racist, extremely racist. In order to make a living farming, especially when you have small farms or urban farms, you need to have help through the winter months. Period, right? And if we don't have a system that supports your farm and your food, then you're gonna fail. And so we need a city that will support that with dollars, with actual money. And then we have to make sure that to make it easy for you to sell at the farmer's market, but also easier for you to sell at the local restaurants. Our local restaurants in Denver pride themselves, and I love them, on making sure that they have farm to table. What farm is it coming from? And who's making profit off of that farm to table? Right now, it's not us. It's not folks doing the food justice work. And the ones who are still priced out. And so that's what we need to focus on. And again, Denver can own land to make this happen.
Just in closing, I think it's really important that we address food insecurity shaming. We have, as one author has said, the best stress poverty in the world. You cannot tell from the way that we look who is struggling with food or not. And so that's why we need assessments, even starting when you are applying for college. Do you need help? Rather than waiting until you're in a crisis mode and then you're too embarrassed. I remember using food stamps at the grocery store and having people look at me. Thank goodness it's a card now, but we still have a system that looks down on people who are struggling. And that's 33% of Denverites with food insecurity. So I just want us to figure out other ways without having people to ask for help that we can be proactive, rather than waiting for crisis.
Thank you for naming that. This will be our last comment from the candidates tonight.
Just one idea I wanted to raise that hasn't come up yet tonight, but I know there's some leaders in the crowd who've worked on this. I see Claudia in the back. I think one other big opportunity is looking at how we use more and more plant-based foods as a way that solves both climate needs and long-term sustainability needs. Right now, substituting meat-based products with plant-based products reduces the carbon footprint of that food by like more than 60%. That's a massive impact. It also is a massive saver of water. So if you looked at places like New York that have done plant-based defaults, where the set meal you provide at places like city hospitals or others are plant-based, it saves more than 650 million gallons of water a year. So as we think about the scarcity of things like water and our longer carbon footprint, I think the opportunity to look at plant-based foods as a key part of the sustainability conversation, I think is really important.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody detasseling seeds in a cornfield? No.
Oh,
That's your science. That's your agriculture fact of the day. Thank you all for your attention, your presence, your survival in this community. I appreciate it. I see you out here. As we wrap up, I want to thank all of our candidates. Yeah, give it up for them. For the things that they shared, for the heat that they took, and for everything in between. Before we pack up, our sponsors, our partners, our friends, Serendipity Catering. We didn't name this at the beginning, but if you had a snack or there's still snacks left outside, local food, where'd it come from? East Denver Food Hub. What? Us? MSU, thank you for the space. Thank you to our students. Thank you to all of the students online and those not in the room that gave questions, participated virtually. To the Denver Community College for also participating. These slides they contributed. So we see the love, we feel the love all over. It was truly a community endeavor. Anything to add, my sweet friend? Oh. No. It's a team effort. Thank you to the team. Yeah. Oh, how could I forget? Toby in the booth, our man. Give it over to Toby in the booth. And we open on Broadway next week. Okay, I'm just kidding. I have team members in the back. Al, please raise your hand. Yes. We have Dave, our co-founder of East Denver Food Hub in the back. We have Catherine in the back. Okay. If you want to know more about East Denver Food Hub or food sustainability or our food system, those are 3 hot names to pick. Okay. Find them. And interpretation services. Yes, please, thank you. And childcare. It's really popping off in that room. So go make a craft before you go. Okay. And yes, well, Ian, will you actually plug it for me?
Okay, I just want to let everybody know that this composting question, if you voted yes for Waste No More this November, the implementation task force starts next week. If we've learned anything under this last administration is they will begin to dismantle our progress around sustainability We need you to participate. I'm a member of the task force. Please find me. I need you to be involved so we can reduce our waste and grow our food.
Okay. There's collateral outside for the candidates. Take your time. And they're running out. So thank you for joining, folks. You're sweet. Oh, yes. Okay.
You worked it out.
You worked.
You were amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.